Welcome everybody to the 12th edition of the SALT Lunchbox. For those who don't know, my name's Dave. I'm the founder of SALT Sport and Life Training. We're a not-for-profit health education company. As you know, we normally deliver into clubs, but right now we're using this time of distancing to create a stronger, more capable, more expansive SALT for the future. Again, the aim of these lunchboxes is to inspire and connect. Inspire you to take away at least one thing that you can put into action and to connect more closely with your family, with your loved ones, and with the people who also connect into this lunchbox. We would love you to be involved. We have James moderating again today. So if you write in a question or a comment into the Q&A box, James will respond, or we might even be able to refer to it during the dialogue today. We'd like you to make those available to everybody. There's a little tab down there to say available to panelists and attendees. As always, we want to express our deep appreciation to the Bendigo Bank, to FC Business Solutions, and to Eastland, who make these sessions possible and free to the public. I'm also excited to make another little announcement, and that is that our wellbeing and mental health sessions, the ones that we do the most, are going online. And that means that we'll be able to present into clubs or into businesses, hopefully as early as next week. Now, obviously, they're going to be different. They're going to be online. We're going to have an emphasis on getting through this COVID period and being apart from one another. But if you're interested, register your interest with me. I'll put a slide up at the end how you can do that. Just dave@sportandlifetraining.com.au, and we're going to start seeing those club interactions and workplace interactions happening in a stronger way than before, with our live quiz and all the things we normally do. Today we're going to be hearing from Layne Stretton, as advertised. Layne is a SALT presenter. He's the chairman of the SALT board. He's a lead facilitator with the organisation Roses in the Ocean, and he's a director at a company called Yellow Box Careers, which is going to be his topic matter today, about talking about careers. So Yellow Box Careers have a very modern and progressive approach to helping people make work choices that lead to flourishing and rewarding careers. So welcome to you, Layne. And we also have Larisse, and we're going to bring Larisse on at the very beginning as well. Larisse is the founder of the Ripple Effect Institute. Ripple Effect is focused on realising greater potential of humanity through value alignment, well-being, connectedness, and leadership to drive a new era of development, growth, and prosperity. This is a wonderful organisation. She's a huge supporter of SALT. And you might recall that I quoted from Larisse in the last session when I was talking about bringing up our kids, about those 1,000 interviews that she did at Monash University with students going into the workplace, and how unprepared many of them were. So to have Larisse, who's worked in that space, to have Layne is a great privilege for us. And Layne has given us permission to engage with him throughout his presentation this morning, the editorial. So we might just interject at times. But over to you, Layne. We want to talk on this topic, my career, my story. And I know that's your thematic in the work that you do. So tell us a little bit about using this time that we have now to re-evaluate our whole careers moving forward.
Yeah, it's a tough time, Dave. And thank you for having me on to talk to the other passion that I have apart from mental health and suicide prevention, because careers is a place that I've spent a lot of time working now. And one of the reasons why I spend a lot of time working in careers, because similar to what Larisse found with a lot of those students that she worked with, people really don't feel like they have a lot of control over their careers. So a little story just to start off with. I'm working with a lady out in the western suburbs at the moment, far west country, Western Victoria, and she's in a real emotional pickle. She's really struggling at the moment because her organisation have cut her hours really significantly. She's not really happy there, though she's been there for quite a long period of time and she's very settled. Doesn't particularly like the work, and has a passion for physiotherapy and for helping people come back from strokes and physical injury. And she's really grappling with you know, what do I do here, Layne? They've cut down. I have an opportunity over here to go and do some work in this space. I have volunteered for them before. They've now asked me if I would like to come on as a trainee, but I don't know how to navigate that transition across into that new way of working. And a lot of people right now are feeling that sense of anxiety about what's happening in their work life. And broadly speaking, we've got three groups of people out there at the moment. We've got the first group who are comfortable in their roles, but not certain what the transition back to normal work life is going to look like for them. In other words, now that I've had an alternative to what it is that I do, how do I feel about what it is that I do? We've got people who have decided, you know what, this has been a great period of reflection for me, and I really don't like what I do, and I want to do something else. And we've got that third group of people who right now have lost their jobs and are starting to think, what am I going to do in order for me to navigate this situation? And we tend to look at getting that next role as being a fairly easy process to go through. You know, I build a resume and I put it out there and I answer some jobs. And that might have been the case 20 or 30 years ago. But finding that next role now is a much more complex process than it ever used to be, because there's not as many and the qualifications needed are a lot higher. I was the worst electrician ever trained in this country, Dave. Now, I can honestly say that to you. This is going back a very long time ago. I was about 18 years old, and the reason I became an electrician is because my uncle Gary was an electrician and my uncle Bobby was an electrician. It's kind of like the Boston police force. Because your dad's a policeman and your sister's a policeman, you become a policeman. So I became an electrician, right? But I was terrible at being an electrician. I blew up that many switchboards. It was ridiculous. But that's what my parents sent me to do, because it felt like that's what I should actually do. And my career now has brought me to here talking to you about careers. You know, did you ever think, let me, quick question for you. Did you ever think all that, you know, 5 or 6 years ago when you first had the idea of salt, that this is where that moment would bring you in your career?
No, never. And I suspect if I knew what was about to unfold, I might have been a bit more hesitant, because right at the very beginning, I just thought, I reckon I could do education in footy clubs and I'll give it a go. And things began to grow. So no, I didn't.
And they tend to grow fairly organically, don't they? Mm. And so one of the issues, I was talking at a conference just recently, I asked the audience, I said, how many of you feel like you're in control of your careers? And I reckon 90% of people put their hand up saying, sorry, how many of you think you're not? And about 90% of people put their hand up and said, we're not in control. Mm. And Forbes sent out a survey recently where 70% of women think that they are not in control of their careers and that they are overlooked for opportunities that should rightfully be theirs. So how do we navigate that, right? And so the big idea that I really want to talk about today is how important it is for you to take control over what it is that actually happens in your career, and how important it is for you to become the author of your career story, as opposed to outsourcing your career to the vagaries of things that happen around you, the economy, your boss, your work team, the organization you work for, where we say, okay, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to let you decide what it is that actually happens for me. And at Yellow Box Careers, we say, no, what we need to do is we need to take control of the decisions and choices that are important to building a sustainable career. And Julian Rotter was the psychologist in the 60s. Many people will be familiar with him, who talked about this idea of a locus of control. That is, you know, do I have an external locus of control? That is, I'm at the whims of everything that happens around me, or does it reside within me? And I understand that I've got to make decisions and choices in order to get what it is that I want. And so what I want to do is encourage people to step into that space today and to say, if I want certain things, I need to take certain steps in order for me to get there. And so I want to give you 3 things that I think could be important for people to have a think about. The first thing is that you need to understand what it is that you want from your career. What do you want? You know, what kind of organization do I want to work for? What role would I aspire to having? Where would I like to work? With what kind of team would I like to work? What kind of policies, what kind of values do I think the organization has? What opportunities are there for advancement? Are they connected with social good? Is that something that's really important to me? When we sit down and we actually map out the criteria, what it does is it actually begins to narrow the focus down to a series of much easier options to think about. One of the problems that we've got as human beings is when things become too complex, we actually stop making decisions. But when things become much easier, then we actually feel much more comfortable with making decisions. Now, if I look around and I see this enormous kind of work environment around me and I think, what am I going to do? Oh, I'll probably just find it easier to stay here where I am than to actually put myself out there and run the risk that something might happen that's actually not as good as what it is that I've got right now. So step number one in terms of determining and building a flourishing career is to own the criteria that you want to focus on, and then begin to look for opportunities that fit that criteria directly. The second thing that I want to encourage people to do today is I want them to go inside. And we've been talking in the last few days about values and how important values are for decision making. I want you to explore not only your values, but I want you to think to yourself, what is it that makes me amazing at what I do? Because every one of us has this little thing that's inside of us that's actually pretty amazing. We're all really interesting, compelling human beings. The problem that we have sometimes is we don't quite know how to express that. And when we're going for a job and someone says, so Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself. We go, I don't know what to say. I don't know about you, but Larice, maybe you ever had to answer that question? It's a really complex question to have to answer.
Yeah, I was just wrote down as you said that a lot of people feel very, very uncomfortable of naming their strengths and what is it that you're really good at, and just naming that in all the work that I've done has made people really uncomfortable. And people's self-esteem tends to come out of that as well. So again, that's what this work that you've been talking about and what we've talked about the other day with the values, really understanding what your values are, that criteria you talk about is an essential first piece. Because again, it's about the non-negotiable of who I am when I show up in the world, and that your authenticity comes out. What is it that you go, no, this is really important to me? And I've talked to a number of people that don't feel like they have the right to name that criteria when they're looking for a job. And it's fascinating, so they and when you put it back to them, say, oh, you're going to take a job that goes against your values or goes against who you are, and how is it then you would show up? And it's really fascinating conversation, Layne.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that I find really interesting when I ask that question, and it's one of those questions I ask right up front in terms of, sitting with someone. So tell me, what makes you amazing at what you do? Because that's what a new employer wants to know. They don't want to know what you do. What they want to know is what makes you amazing at what you do. And the what that makes you amazing, what makes you amazing is in the how, not in the what. And so oftentimes what we're trained to do is to talk about ourselves in terms of competency, right? That I'm a good communicator, or I'm a good project manager, or I'm good at running a team, or I'm good at customer service. And so we have this kind of bland story that's kind of anchored in competency, as opposed to saying, what makes me amazing at customer service is I really care about what happens to the person that I'm working with. I really care about them having a great experience, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that the experience they have with me and my organization is one that keeps them coming back. That's what makes me amazing at what I do, right? But people don't go down to that next level where they really unpack the great talents and gifts that they bring to some of those really bland competencies. So one of the things that I'd really like people to do is to move from understanding yourself in terms of competency to understanding yourself in terms of what makes you amazing, and start to build your career story around those incredible gifts that you bring to an organization. And it's a privilege for that organization to have you. And let's get rid of this imposter syndrome stuff that we carry that says, I'm not good enough, or I'm not really that great, or I'm not. And let's get into feeling really empowered and proud of what it is that I can bring to an organization. Now, the third thing, and connected into what you just talked about. Yes, go, Larisse.
Layne, I think an important part of that too, yes, we're talking about career, but it's who you are as a person. So if I say, you know, I'm a fantastic project manager, well, part of that skill set has been becoming a parent has really added to being a project manager. So it's not necessarily the skills that you get out of your career. And the number of people that I've talked to, especially those looking for their first jobs, or, you know, they're coming back in, say, after they've had kids, or they're switching to a new career, is that they say, but I don't have those skills. They haven't had those skills in a career they have in life. And you've got to remember, and you're saying it really clearly, who is it that I am as a person, and all my experience in life experience.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because when we think about how decisions are made, so if you go to the science of decision making, 60% of all our decision making is made based on emotion, right? 30% is based on habit, only 10% is based on logic. Now, the logic is the skills piece. That's the competency piece, right? That's the kind of, I've worked for this company and I have this particular skill and maybe even this particular qualification. But you know what? I'm not actually going to employ you for the skill. I'm going to employ you for the human being that you are. I'm going to employ you because I like you. Because if I don't like you, I don't care how skillful you are, I'm not going to bring you into my organization. So that understanding how important that likability and character are to the decision-making process is really going to help you to build a story that is going to be really interesting and compelling for the potential employer. And I think one of the things that's central to that is the third point that I want to make, which absolutely picks up on what you just said, Larisse, and that is know what you love. Because when you know what you love, you know what you bring energy to. And when you know what you bring energy to, when you can frame a story around that, you light up. I think it was Ed that was talking about that a few sessions ago. You absolutely light up in that, because now you're talking from a place that's based here, not a place that's based up here. And so we need to find a really natural way of talking about the things that we're intensely passionate about. So they're the three things that I really would like to put on the table. The first one is know what you want and build your criteria, and understand the type of organization, people, etc., that you want to work for and what it is that you want to do. Number two, know what makes you amazing and develop a comfort in talking about that, because that's what employers want to hear. And number three, know what you love and bring energy to, because when you do that, your story becomes incredibly interesting to many people out there.
I had so many thoughts as you were saying all of those things. And, you know, I reckon that most employers are kind of sort of around my age. You know, I'm on the cusp of being I'm sort of a baby boomer at the end of that. And sometimes I'll read an application for a job at SALT, and a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old will be saying, I am amazing. And I'll think, that's good. I'd like to see a degree of humility as well in what you're saying. And I want to see evidence. I don't want you to just tell me that you are amazing, but I reckon it's really, really important that people can demonstrate that they've been using their values and their strengths to do something. I would say, don't tell me you're amazing unless you can back that up, because I'm going to ask you, why are you amazing? What have you actually done? And that can be difficult, can't it, when you are 20 and 25 and you haven't been a parent and you haven't had quite as much time to develop, you know, some attributes that an employer wants.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. The thing that I think is critically important there is that when we talk about ourselves, equally we're happy talking about our strengths as we are our vulnerabilities. Equally, because what makes us amazing is our fallibility. What makes us amazing is our lived experience. What makes us amazing is the things that we've done, the knowledge, the wisdom, the insight that we've gained from failure, that I'm actually going to bring to this organization to help this organization become better. So when we're really comfortable in every aspect of our story, that's when we become really interesting, because here's a funny little thing, Dave. It's called the pratfall effect.
Oh, yeah.
And the pratfall effect means this, that when individuals have a few little weaknesses, they become even more interesting and compelling to people who are around them. So don't be afraid of the little idiosyncrasies. Don't be afraid of the little failures. Don't be afraid of the things that aren't your great strengths, because they actually make you even more interesting to people.
I'm grateful for the pratfall effect.
So
It's kept me going for a long time. People's forgiveness.
I give you some other examples that I've come across. You know, I was interviewing a young man once, and you know, I was wanting him to talk about how great he was, and with humility, and he was struggling to come up with his strengths. And he, you know, we were talking about resilience, and I'd said, give me a story of your resilience. Well, he went on to then to tell me about, you know, in his gap year, he was off in South America, and this story that was showed great resilience. And out of this story alone, we decided to hire him. You know, it's twofold too. It's the people that are interviewing have got to understand how to interview and ask questions and understand how to bring that out of people. An 18-year-old has already had 18 years of life experience. You know, I've chatted with some international students that have come over here. They're living on their own. They're an hour away from uni. They're navigating the bus. Their English isn't that great, as opposed to someone sitting next to them who's still living at home, and nothing wrong with that, who, you know, isn't cooking their own meals, who has somebody else that's doing their laundry. If you put those two people up against, you know, and what their strengths are, they're going to be totally different. You need to be able to articulate that and figure out who you are and what is it that you are good at, and using your life experience. And that's the older you get as well, don't get me wrong. And a bit of humility with that, I get that. But you do want them to show up, as Layne said, that has a confidence in who they are.
No, good. I just want to ask you, at the moment, Layne, there are people out there who are transitioning from one career to another. And I want to talk about that process of transitioning, because when you went from being an electrician to doing what you do now, obviously you had to keep working and providing money, but you had to also build a skill set that would allow you to perhaps step sideways into a new career. So for people who are listening and thinking now's the time possibly to transition, but I've got a family to you know, protect and look after, how do they do that best, do you think?
Yeah. Can I go back to the story, maybe in answering that, Dave, that I mentioned right at the beginning, this young girl? So where we ended up was, we actually ended up with her working 3 days a week for the organisation that she's currently working for, which they were really happy about, and 2 days a week transitioning over into this this other role. And the organisation she's working with are absolutely supportive of her over a longer period of time, moving more towards that kind of career. So what I think is kind of interesting is that we tend to think of ourselves as either only doing this or only doing that. And therefore, currently I work as a CFO in a large organisation, but what I really would like to do is own a coffee shop in Anglesea. I can't find a way of going from here to here unless I've got a bucket load of money and I'm prepared to make some sacrifices. But what we do have these days is this thing called a portfolio career. And a portfolio career, which is becoming very comfortable for, you know, Gen Xers and Ys and millennials, is this idea that I can do multiple things to earn money, all within a work life or a career. I have my own online business. I can work 2 days a week over here. I can be a graphic artist for this little startup. I can even have my own little online business going at the same time. And so careers don't necessarily have to be the career that our fathers had, which was, 45 years with one organisation in government. Nowadays, careers can enable you to do lots of different things. And so what I'd encourage people to do is to find a way of moving towards that outcome, not find a way to step into that particular role. And if that takes time, then I think it's important for you to consider some of the impacts that if you took the big step that might have. Financial is one of those, and think about it more as an organic process.
Right. Look, I can't believe it. It's 1:25, and one of the things that we decided we wanted to try and do is get to the tying up period with 5 minutes to go, so that we weren't rushed. And so I actually want to just go to the share points and go through these, but feel free to butt in as we come to our conclusion. Your 3 takeaways, Layne: take control of your career choices and do what makes you happy. Number 2, prepare your story. And we've been hearing in the feedback the importance of sharing our story and being a good storyteller, and be proud of your achievements while still, I guess, having that humility and that vulnerability. And be likable and build supportive relationships. I remember hearing at some stage that, the decision about whether to employ somebody often was very little about what they said in terms of their skill set, but much more as they were perceived to be, whether they were likable. Will they fit into this organisation? Will people like working with them?
I think that last point, Dave, is actually a really important one, and that is build supportive relationships. Yep. 70% of roles that are out there don't go to market. They're filled by people that we know. So if you build strong, supportive relationships with networks that are around you, it's likely that if you are looking for a new role, you'll potentially find that within the network that you're associated with.
Yep, great. Sorry, next slide. This is important. We want people to go away with action points, and so we don't want to rush through this. So what can people actually do once they leave here? And, obviously sometimes it's good to strike while the iron's hot and these thoughts are fresh. Spend some time to get your marketing material up to date. Again, feel free to involve yourselves in either of these. Build an amazing resume. And you've talked here about the importance of a LinkedIn profile. Again, I've spoken to a few people recently who've said that job coaches are very emphatic about what you're putting out on LinkedIn. And for those that are on the webinar, this is incredible and very kind of you, Layne, because I know this would be quite a valuable thing. Layne will provide a document that he wrote about how to build an amazing resume and LinkedIn profile free of charge. So for people listening today, how do they contact you to get this information? Can they do that through me?
Yeah, I think do that through SALT, and you can pass the information on, and we'll make sure that that you get that. The whole process of getting a role starts with how do you build likability into a resume that's fundamentally a logical document, and how do you build a story that from the moment someone picks up your resume or looks at your LinkedIn profile is really interesting and compelling. And so we'll help you to do that. Anyone who gets in touch with SALT gets in touch with yourself. We're happy to send that information through to them.
Fantastic. On Friday, we've got Richard Maloney. He's going to be talking about turning your fears into powerful thoughts. Richard is the founder and CEO of Quality Mind Global. He's the author of a number of books, including Injury Free, Mental Training for Elite Athletes, The Minds of Winning Teams, Creating Team Success Through Engagement and Culture. I've listened to Richard speak. He's very, very compelling. He works with a lot of AFL footballers. I was listening to Sean Higgins from North Melbourne and Western Bulldogs talk about the transformation that took place in his career once he met Richard and started to embrace some of Richard's teachings. So I encourage everybody to join us on Friday to hear Richard, and we'll be interviewing him. Once again, we always want to thank our partners, and we don't do that with any sense of obligation. We do it because we actually really are very, very grateful. If you've missed out on any of our sessions, then go to our website. They'll link you to the YouTube, and you can catch up on anything that you've missed. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, we're going to be starting to do wellbeing and mental health. Not all of our courses at this stage, but we might progress into some more of our courses later. But we want to go online with your people, hear how they're going, run the live quiz, go through all of the symptoms that we might be experiencing and how we deal with those. So you can contact me at Dave at sportandlifetraining.com.au to be involved in that. So we want to say thank you. Again, that's the number for Lifeline that we always put up just in case people need them. But thank you for joining us today. And remember that for those of us who embrace the time that we're in, we can and will come out of this stronger and better and richer in the things that really matter. Thank you, Larice. Thank you, Layne. And thank you, everybody, for joining us once again. Bye for now.
Bye for now.